Hey, let's talk spinnerbait. You know, I brought my Classic Spinnerbait back out, and I've had questions about why do you not use the R-bend? Why do you do line twist instead of the R-bend? Well, on this light wire, the wire is actually too light for an R-bend. It just flex back and forth. So you have to do the twist. And well, then why do you use the light wire? Well, the light wire gives you so much more vibration. You feel that thump. It's because that wire's moving. If you have too stiff of a wire, you don't get that vibration. So, well, if I have a stiffer wire, I won't have to change spinnerbaits. I'll never break one. You're right. But you won't get near the bites. So everything's got a trade-off, and there's compromise everywhere. But I want to tell you a few things about this bait where there is no compromise, there is no trade-off. It's a design. The body of this bait, the compact bait, the way this bait is made with the short wire that comes out of the lead head and goes to the twist is critical. That keeps that bait low profile. The bait doesn't want to turn over. A spinnerbait is not weedless if it's running sideways. The hook's exposed. When that hook is upright and that arm is covering that hook, that's when that bait is more weedless. So the profile, and let me tell you, you say, well, why do you have the blade combinations that you have? Early on, I learned fishing a spinnerbait, what you want is you want counterbalance. You want one blade over here and one blade over here, and you want them out of sync. And they're fighting against each other, and that's what causes all that vibration. A lot of that happens because of the way you space. Everybody said, well, why do you use all these beads? It's how much spacing you have between your front blade and your back blade that makes it easy for those baits to be turning in opposite form. And that gives you maximum vibration. So there's a lot goes into making this bait. And then this little tail, I designed this tail 25, 30, 40 years ago. Burke Lure Company had a split tail eel, 77 eel. And it had a flat body, but it had the greatest legs. Man, those little flat legs, they had so much movement, but that flat body would tear and make your bait run sideways. This little bait is a very hard plastic with a little light flat tail, so there's a lot of action. And when you put that on the back of that spinnerbait, as I have here, it gives it a keel. It makes it run more true. The more true it runs, the more weedless it's going to be. And that is a big factor when you're fishing over a brush pile or by a stump or a log, or especially cypress roots, and you want to let that thing down. That blade turning one way and the other is giving you vibration, but it's also giving you stability. A lot of people say, well, I can get more vibration out of a single spin. Possibly so, but if you hit that blade and it quits turning on that single spin, it's going to roll over. With a tandem spin, you've always got two blades turning. If one gets ticked and quits turning, the other is keeping that bait upright and keeping it in a keel position where you don't get hung up. So there is a whole lot that's going into this spinnerbait. I use a 3/4 ounce. People ask me all the time, why do you use a 3/4 ounce? D. Thomas rocked the world when he introduced flipping. And Dave Glebe came from California in my era and just took everybody's money with the flipping technique. The whole trick behind that flipping technique, or the biggest part of it, was getting fish to react to a bait out of impulse. They didn't have time to think about it. You'd flip that thing right in that little hole in the grass, or right in that little hole in the brush pile, or right by that boat piling on that boat dock, and those fish didn't have time to think about it. They just reacted to it. So it was an impulse bite. So I started using a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait because I could do the same thing. I could run it up there by that stump and I could just let it fall right in his face, and before he ever had time to look at it or think about it, he would react to it. So that's why I fish the 3/4 more than I do any. Yes, there's times a 3/8 will wear you out, and there's times a 1/4 ounce. They all have their place. But this bait that I use so much, number 7 Indiana, number 3 Colorado, on a 3/4 ounce head, spaced 4 beads, I used to use 5 beads, but now I'm putting heat shrink on there. Well, that heat shrink takes up the space of a bead. So we've dropped one of them, and the spacing is perfect. The heat shrink, it keeps that wire that holds that swivel from opening up when a big bass shakes his head. So that is the one addition to the new, that's the only thing new about the Hank Parker Classic, is we added that heat shrink. But that thing vibrates. That compact bait, 3/4 ounce head, allows me to get those impulse strikes. So that's some of the questions. Another question is, why do you only have chartreuse and white? Every color spinnerbait is wonderful as long as it's chartreuse and white. It's just the color that has been by far the most productive to me. Can you change skirts? Is there times that another skirt might be better? Yes, there is. And yes, you can change skirts. No big deal. But the heads are the same. The skirt is absolutely perfect. The blades are perfect. It is exactly what I made a magic bait. The history behind this bait: I led for 2 days the BASS tournament in November on the St. Johns River, and I caught them in a place on the river where you had to fish this bait just right in the eelgrass. The St. Johns River is tidal controlled. It has current, and with the tide it would change. So I would always be facing that current, and I'd run that spinnerbait over that eelgrass, and I'd just fade it. And because I had that heavy head, it would fade right in that little hole, and I was catching some giants. Well, I did that for 2 days. The last day, my fish had seen that bait enough that I did not catch a big enough bag to win. I ended up finishing 3rd in that tournament. So we go back in April, Super Bass tournament. If I win this tournament, I'm going to be the first angler in history to win the Grand Slam. Now, that's a title that might not mean a lot to a lot of people, but a little old country boy from Maiden, North Carolina, man, that meant something to me. I wanted to be that guy. I was the first guy to ever win the Classic and Angler of the Year. Now, Mark Davis did it in the same year, but I was the first guy to do it. I won the Classic in '79, and '83, 4 years later, I won Angler of the Year. So I was the first guy to ever have both of those titles. And that was a big deal, you know, and I was proud of that. But I wanted to be that first guy to ever win everything, and I'd never won a Super Bass. So I really wanted to win it. I missed it the year before by 1 ounce on Lake Lanier. I finished 2nd. Gary Klein won it. I was 1 ounce behind Gary. So here we go again, going back to the St. Johns River. I'm doing the same thing I was, big willow leaf blade, Hank Parker spinnerbait, everything just like you see here, but I had a number 8 willow leaf. The second day of that tournament, my fish got really tough to catch, and that was a 4-day tournament. And they got really tough to catch, and I didn't catch a very big string that second day. So I got back to the hotel room, and I start putting together, and I put this Indiana blade combination together. I said, I'm going to fish it tomorrow. It's going to fall different. It's going to flutter different. Those fish have not seen it. I'm going to use this bait. So that's what I did. And the next 2 days, I caught giant stringers. Like I had 2 or 3 or 4 fish over 6 pounds every day. I have an 8 or 9 pounder the last day, and I hammered them. And I won the Super Bass tournament by 8 or 9 pounds. I blew it out with this bait. I left there, went to the Missouri Invitational. I won on this bait. I left there, went to the Bassmaster Classic. I won on this bait. This bait is a magical bait. Don't ask me why. I can't explain everything about it. I've told you some of the key points, but spinnerbait fishing today is more difficult than it was when I fished. Fish are more heavily molested, and it takes more finesse. But the right spinnerbait can win. The right spinnerbait can catch them. And putting it in the right place and fishing it the right way. And I'm telling you, you're not going to buy a better spinnerbait than the Hank Parker Classic. And we improved it with a little heat shrink, but really, other than that, it's the same bait that I hand built in my hotel room in 1983 on the banks of the St. Johns River, and went out and won $135,000 in that event. I wish I had that money today. I don't know what I did with it, but it's gone. But anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit about why this bait's so special, and we'll go down the bait. I've done every blade combination. I've spaced every way you can possibly think about spacing out this blade. I've changed a lot of things, and it's the perfect spacing the way I have it to get these blades to counteract, to give you the maximum vibration, and that's what you want. So let's go throw a spinnerbait and talk about what it's doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and why this bait is so effective. All right, look how that bait's tracking. That thing is tracking so beautiful. It is tracking and it is thumping. I love this thing. I cannot tell you what this bait means to me, how it thumps, and it's such a confidence bait. We're fishing in crystal clear water, certainly not spinnerbait conditions, but I wanted you to see some of the benefits that I was talking about. If you run a long arm spinnerbait through a tree, by a stump, through a cypress root, that thing's going to roll over and you're going to hang up. This low profile bait, because of the way the wire comes out of the nose of the lead where it turns, it does not roll over. Look how that bait tracks. That bait tracks absolutely perfect. The 1/4 ounce to 3/8 ounce does as well. It tracks perfect. And that's what makes it weedless. If it gets on the side or starts running sideways, forget it. You're going to get hung up. And that is the benefit and the beauty of that compact bait with that short arm. And you can run it right up next to the brush and the bushes and the bulrushes and the trees and the limbs and the stumps and the logs and the boat docks and not hang up. And as a result, you're putting it. When I fish a spinnerbait, I do not want to be inhibited. I want to throw it wherever I think that fish is. So I don't want a spinnerbait that says, you can't do that, you're going to get hung up. I don't want that. I want to put it right where I need to put it to catch that fish. So I do not want to be inhibited. And that's what's so beautiful about this compact profile. Look at the fish coming after it. He's coming after it. He's coming after it. Boy, he came off the bank after it. Made a big wake. Now look at that. I had one little piece of grass. If it's grass on it, they will not bite it. They will. I don't understand that, but I know I've done it so much. If it's got grass on it, they will not bite it. He came out of that shallow water after it. Did not get it. But I'm not inhibited from throwing this bait anywhere because it is low profile and doesn't roll over and allows that bait to stay upright and weedless. There's only one way I know to make one more weedless than the Classic, and that's coming next. That's coming up. Coming all through that brush. Look at that coming through that brush, and that bait staying upright. Little bass following it. Look at them. Bluegill, not bass. I'm sorry. Come right through those pads. Look at that. Upright, not hang up. I'm not saying you never get hung up, but I'm saying you'll hang up less with this bait than any bait you'll ever fish. Other than the one, and it's coming next, and I'll tell you about it later. But for right now, right here's all you need to know. Classic spinnerbait. Hey, you know, there's only one place to get this bait, and you can go to hpbaits.com or hankparkersbaitshop.com, and we got them available. You can order them, order as many as you like, but I'm telling you, we're making them all handmade in the United States. They're made one at a time, and I inspect every lot of them. They're all to my specs. That is the one thing when we brought this bait to the market through a different manufacturer, I didn't have as much control. This time I've got total control to make sure this bait comes out exactly like I want them. So we're hand building them one at a time, packaging them, and we'll send them to you. So don't wait to spring to order when we're going to be covered up. Order now and try them, and I promise you, you're gonna love them.
The house needs painting, grass needs mowing. Where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.